So this is all new to the city council again this evening, so we're still figuring all this out as we try to find our temporary home until we build our new home. Right. This evening, we have microphones in front of us. In order for those microphones to work, you have to push the button and turn them on. Okay, so if you want to be heard, push the on button. If you want to not be heard, leave it off. And you do have to speak into the microphone. So if you're standing too far away, people won't be able to hear you. So make sure that you're talking into the microphone. And that goes for if you want to testify as well. It is being recorded online through YouTube. So those of you at home, hopefully you can hear us. We are in a big open box, and so the audio may not be as good as if you were in person. We did that on purpose, so that would encourage you to show up and listen in person. No, seriously, but that would be the reason why you may not be able to hear us as well. We are only taking public testimony this evening in person, so there's not a call-in option this evening. You actually have to be here. We've appropriately spaced all the chairs so people can do their physical distancing and separate themselves by more than 6 feet. This evening, we are hearing in our work session food pod options and further discussion. Is that Clint up first? Or?
Yeah, I'd like to just make a brief introduction of, we've been talking about mobile vending and food pods now for probably 3 years since I've been in part of the discussion. It was before that as well. So the latest or the last time we talked about it, council kind of said go back and evaluate some options of where the food pod could be in the long term. And so we've been doing that as a staff, and so Clint's going to present those kind of what we see as 2 options tonight and have that for your discussion.
Thanks, want to kick it off for us?
Yeah, I'm not going to show up on the microphone and web, but you guys will be able to hear it. I know you have here.
So, isn't that microphone portable?
Yeah, you can just grab it. Turn it on.
So you can speak into that microphone.
Just got to turn it off.
That way we'll get a little bit better auditory.
How does that work?
There you go.
Much better. So, as Byron said in his introduction, council directed us to go look at alternative sites to the place where it's currently operating on Orchard back around the first of the year. And we as a leadership team evaluated 13 sites altogether around the city. That some are some privately owned, that maybe the city might consider acquiring, and then city-owned properties as well. As we looked at those 13 sites, 3 really came to the top of our criteria, and those are the current site on Orchard, View Park, and Newport Park. And you have an 11.17 handout in front of you, and all 3 of those sites are shown on that handout. Starting with the Orchard site, it's the first one. It takes up the left-hand side of that page. It's the current site. And we've been working with the Anderson Perry, the city's engineers, to prepare a site plan and cost estimate to place 6 permanent pads on the site. Now, with all of the sites that we're going to discuss tonight, try to imagine basically RV parking and how an RV park is set up with an individual sewer connection, an individual water connection, and a power car. That's pretty much how we're looking at doing in a permanent food pod. It's possible to do 6, definitely using Anderson Perry's layout. Looking at how RV parks are structured with the angle parking, it may be possible to go as high as 8 sites on there. You have 2 alternate layouts at the bottom of your sheet that say Orchard alternate locations. That we could theoretically go up as high as that. Those are 15 by 40 sites. And generally, RV pads are 10 by 40. So you have room for the trailer or truck, as well as a place for people to queue up and have the little tables where you have the mustard and all that stuff. When you're looking at Orchard, shade is going to be a perpetual issue there unless the city makes a permanent investment in some kind of a shade structure, as well as there will be no permanent restrooms, but there is access to Mackenzie Park to utilize those, as well as porta potties, and down the road, we may consider doing a permanent restroom. The Orchard site has some really good advantages. It's close to downtown, and it has good visibility on Collector Street, as well as being directly across from the post office, where pretty much everyone in town will eventually visit in any month. And it also helps further the city council's goal of building a strong downtown with lots of customers in the area for various attractions. It's in an area that has a lot of people, you have employees, you have students, so there's a lot of people who would use that site. It has a pretty reasonable cost estimate. On the high end, we're assuming it would be about $108,000 total investment, with the majority of the cost in the utilities at around $58,000. There's some advantages because water and electricity are already connected to the site. We would still need sewer, and that would need to run through and create the individual drops. It's possible that utilizing city resources could substantially lower the cost of building on that site. The water department did basically a temporary water connection earlier this year. It was about $50. So all of the cost estimates you're looking at tonight are assuming a design process through Hermiston and a bid. They don't factor in using city labor on those. So we have, as a leadership team, looked at all these sites twice now, and the Orchard site, after 2 reviews, has kind of risen to the top, and it is our recommended option for the council, based primarily on location and cost of improvements. The Newport Park site is the second option. It's in the upper right-hand corner of your handout. It's a site at the existing city park next to the city's well. This one is a smaller site. It would probably only be able to accommodate 4 permanent pads rather than 6 or even 8 at Orchard. This is because there's some pretty serious site constraints there. You have the city's well on the west side, and then a very nice grove of shade trees on the east side. So there's really no way to expand farther than the 4 pads going out on Orchard. And in addition, there's the city's drainage swale to the north, so you could have 2 roads would be difficult in the long. Now, it does, however, being in the park, have very good shade and permanent restrooms in the well house, which are currently out of service but could be brought back. It's like the Orchard site, very close to downtown, has a lot of employees and potential customers in the area, but unlike the Orchard site, has very poor visibility because Newport, 5th, and 6th are all local residential streets, and it's outside of probably on Main or Grover. Also looking at it, we thought there's quite a potential for residential interference around there. It is surrounded by single-family dwellings, and there's no off-street parking available, so all the customers would have to park on the street, which would create further long-term issues. It is, however, the lowest cost alternative, with probably around $89,000 in total investment needed, most of that going into utilities at $44,000. The drawback there is that there are no utility connections in the area, and so any new connection will require excavating the newly paved streets on Newport. The poor visibility, small size, and potential for high neighborhood impacts make this the least preferred option without any recommendation to move forward in that direction. View Park is the third option that we're looking at. It's the lower right corner of your handout. Working with Anderson Perry, we developed a layout that would generate 6 pads that would be on the south side of the site, and then the Parks Department has modified that plan that Anderson Perry generated, relocating the pod further to the north, and that's what's shown on the handout that you have in front of you. The Anderson Perry plan placed the pod at the very south end of the sprayground where the paved parking terminates, and as Parks Department looked at it, they have a master plan that has a future dog park at that location. So the location of the pod was moved north between Funland and the sprayground is shown. Like Newport, this has had excellent access to shade, even has a shade structure, and it will have existing restroom access as well as future restroom access when Funland rebuilds. The visibility, gets away from any major employer, say maybe the hospital, and it's not visible from Elm Street. It's also more likely to be used on a seasonal basis, only when there's good weather, when the park is being used in the summer, and when soccer is practicing or competing there. It's also the most expensive option. It's figuring about $184,000 total investment. A lot of this is necessary paving is expensive, that's a $48,000 investment, and utilities are also expensive at $76,000. This one, because of the level of construction that is necessary, there's not as much opportunity for city staff to do the work of building the parking lot, building the utilities, so it would be more likely to be a bid situation. But even with all of the constraints that it does have, it is a very close second. Staff likes Butte for its future upgrade possibilities, and Orchard just barely edges it out. So summarizing, the Orchard site wins out because it has the potential to create robust commercial space. When you look at it, Orchard is already an established location. It's been in operation for 2 years. The customers know where it is. Moving to Butte Park will require considerable advertising. Vendors will experience a slowdown as customers have to learn the new location. When we look at the council goals, the goals are to build a robust and vibrant downtown. That's what our renewal district is already working on, and the Orchard site, keeping your commercial customers downtown helps build on the investments we're making. This is not an urban renewal project, but it does help further the council goals. We've also already started working at the Orchard site with some of the utility work. We've got made it an electrical connection, installed lighting, and water utilities. And so it can be brought up to a permanent status with the smallest investment. View Park will require large capital investments, but those can also be shared with View Park upgrades that Charles Park is working on with them. View Park has a good potential for on-site security. Having vendors there on a daily basis helps keep an eye on funneling in the spray grounds. However, because they're not good visibility from Elm and Northwest 7th Street does not have a lot of through traffic, but the vendors themselves on the beaten path is an overnight security issue. As the council thinks about this, one thing that we could do is consider using the Orchard for a couple more years, setting aside budget to make a really nice facility at Butte. But we're more years you stay at Orchard, the harder it is to locate in the future. So we're recommending at this point in time that Orchard be made a permanent home, if the council agrees, and this work better, especially once we get individual sewer connections. Larry and Diana are here. They've been helping with the food pod design, and if they have any questions or comments to add in, now's the time to do it. We also have Patrick Hunt here tonight, who manages the food pod at the current location, and he's been over looking at the various designs with me, and he has some comments to it. Great.
So, your report is not part of our agenda packet.
No, his notes?
Yeah, can we maybe get a copy of that in the agenda packet so that we can review it?
I mean, all the stuff he was talking from is on this. That's in front of you.
Yeah, but he also made some very good points, and I'm not able to write fast enough.
Yeah, we can get you his notes.
Okay, that'd be good. Yeah, so I can see the pluses and minuses and kind of the stuff that you guys talked through. I think that would be helpful to review. Who wants to go first? Larry, Diana?
I don't know that we have anything to add. We'd be happy to answer any questions. I think Patrick probably has some helpful thoughts.
My only question for Larry is, at Butte, there is an intention to put utilities into that same location already anyway, right?
Yes.
So, you could pretty much eliminate that cost from the cost of the food pod budget that you've included.
Yes and no. So the sewer line would have to be upgraded, larger. The food pod requirements would be, especially for sewer, would have to be upgraded. And so the line we're planning to run with just the concession restroom, 4 inches, and we're thinking 6 inches at a minimum for the food pod in that location.
Not a huge cost though, right?
No, it's not, but it does add, just one more additive component.
I'm just looking at the total cost of the Butte project being 76,000 of it being utilities. You make them almost equal when you compare Butte versus Orchard if you eliminate utilities costs.
Yeah, and Clint did a good job of describing, the pros and cons between each of the two favorite options, and you could make an argument either way. There's certainly some advantages to both sites. I think Clint's point, which I agree with, is the Butte Park site is more of a seasonal operation. You could expect a lot of activity around the spray park and the new Funland for sure, and then the soccer program and other uses, big events. So there's some definite seasonal advantages to being there, but from a year-round point of view, and then the opportunity to bring people downtown, at least from the staff's point of view, really kind of drove that to be our favorite.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody have any questions? Thanks, Larry. Mr. Hunt, did you want to speak?
And having copies.
Okay. Thank you.
Patrick Hunt, 615 West Highland in Hermiston. Thank you guys for having me tonight. Really appreciate Diana, Clint, and Larry's help. It's been boom, nonstop. We are asking customers what would they prefer, or would it be easier to get to the view, and they're all saying no. They're thinking it would be out of the way, they would forget about us every day. The post office is the only thing kind of saving us with new customers. They're like, oh, I didn't know you were here. Like, you've been here your whole life? Yeah, but I didn't know you were here. So it's kind of scary if we move, like you said, we're going to really big time. Therefore, some of the vendors don't have a lot of capital in the bank, and as soon as this COVID thing's over with, they're pushing just to stay alive now. If we move them too fast, I think they're going to leave. I was all for the view until we got talking, and I got talking to other people. I do think it's going to be off the beaten path. That does not mean that if everything's upgraded there, not so much as far as sewer, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't have like a food truck night there seasonally. I'm pretty sure Larry and you could throw out some spider boxes for power and stuff. And that would be one of our goals, because there's more vendors calling than we can handle in this spot. So if we would consider doing like a food truck night, the hot part of the year, once a month or something like that, that might be an option later on. But I'm thinking if we actually set it up like a campsite with the sewer and everything, it'll go amazing there. What I am concerned with right now, I can't stop the parking. I throw cones out, they're running over the cones. I know Taco Garcia's people is not going to stop coming on his property, but it's getting very dangerous. I'm getting scared a little more than I was the year before, because all the customers are trying to park every which way. People are having to wait on customers to pull out so they can get out. So it's getting very dangerous. I don't think just the signs are going to do it. I think we're going to have to barricade that area somehow. The good thing is Taco Garcia, he purchased one of the portable 40 Johns there. So he's kind of helping us with some deals now also. And I told him that, I was like, dude, you don't have anything on paper to see. You look like you don't want to join us. He's up for, if we leave, go to the view. He's got another truck also, so we have another option there. But I really think that we're trying to push promotion of downtown, and we're already sawed up there, and all we're kind of missing is just one utility, the sewer, even though it's like a campsite, we're saying we technically have everything except for the sewer. So, and the canopy, we definitely need to consider canopy because people aren't staying, it's just too hot. And if we can get a canopy and set those tables in line with the canopy, I think that with us closing the front of it off, because I've actually asked a couple of bands, could we get band nights going there? We'll close that off so kids and people can't get to that main street in front of the post office. One way in and one way out. I really think that canopy would help generate more business in the area. People would actually walk and eat with us there. you know, I know you guys are on a budget, and I know everything costs, but Clint and I were talking about, you know, if we establish ourselves here another year or two and let these funds build up, and then we would consider, you know, that way you've not lost so much money, you've got funds constantly building up for another potential location. So, you know, and, you know, anything's subject to change, but I'm just a little worried if we move right now that the clientele's going to leave in there. And it's hard for me to keep vendors there in the business. That's pretty much it. I do think we need those spots where we can just kind of back in there. And plus, if we cut out that parking, that just gives us a little more on our space too. So maybe not 8, maybe we could push another one in there, 9 units. Be a little cramped, but it's a lot of space if we cut out that parking. I don't know how hard it's going to be to get people to walk from the other side. I would like to maybe think about disabled vets or people that can't walk that good. We have a pull-up section for them. But my kids always running out, carrying food, taking their money or something. These people can't get out their cars. So, you know, they can park on the other side of the street, over there beside the church and come across because they're in wheelchairs and stuff. So we got to kind of consider that. If we were building a building, we would have to make it handicap accessible. So let's kind of put that in our thoughts too, that, you know, everyone can't walk to where we're at, but I do need to get these people out of their parking lot. That's the thing. They're just running on top of each other. We did have an incident. I did call the chief of police. Someone came on the site and they must thought they were in Portland, because I know they just passed some law and they defecated in our parking lot, just like it was nothing. So I ordered cameras. I don't know if they're going to be able to get the whole spot. I'm planning on putting one at the park, the eating section, behind the trailers. I don't know about that post stop. We get camera get on that spot, but something's always going on at that post stop. So we're just trying to keep our eyes open and try to be safe. People are always yelling and fighting over there or something. Time you get ready to call these gentlemen in uniform, they're gone. So that's all we want. If they want to start problems, go somewhere to start problems. Maybe these guys can run with them down. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah. So appreciate you too, Patrick, for taking on the leadership role in helping to organize and run that food pod. I've been there a couple times, and the place looks really nice. The changes that you've made this year look really good. I do have the similar concerns that you've expressed as far as safety. That was always, I think, our primary concern in that location as Orchard, because of the post office and the school, new parking access is also a very heavily trafficked street. And so making sure that the ingress and egress is appropriate, as well as protecting people that are using. I don't know how we can maybe indicate the parking across, just force people to park across the street and walk across to the pod. If you had some plan or design of maybe it's striping, maybe it's, I don't know, some sort of marking.
Right now, the food pod isn't utilizing the entirety of the city lot. So if we made it a permanent home, we would definitely fence it off so there is no parking available on that side. I believe we made a parking arrow sign.
We had a
earlier,
banner,
right?
but the wind knocked it down, the wind tore it to pieces. And it-
So we would come up with a permanent way to indicate this is the parking lot and this is the food pod.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
later on, we're discussing the ordinance for food trucks, and the ordinance states that we will only have 6 mobile food vendors
In that location.
in the pot.
The food pod is actually separate from mobile vendors. Mobile vendors, where we have the 6 licenses, are for the at-large vendors who are near Walmart, near the cottage. And then when we have the publicly owned property that the city has, then you can operate on it using a separate agreement.
Okay.
So that only applies to the at-large.
Okay.
But you can only have 6 on that side, correct? That's all that would fit, is that what you're saying?
Well,
There's potentially 8.
potentially 8. That's what these two alternate layouts on the bottom, mathematically it is. The question is, when you actually get in there, yeah, we would do a lot more research, whether it would be a 6 or 8, or maybe a 7 and a bathroom. Yeah, there might be a lot of options that we can.
I think it is like 20 something. I measured it, it's like 28 feet more if
trying to take that into account.
Oh, you're right, took into account?
Yes.
Any other questions?
I've got questions concerning the existing layout at Orchard. If we adopt this as the permanent location, would we probably mark out as a resurface the area so that it says this is truck spot 1, et cetera, and the existing parking marks that are there would be erased?
Yeah, what we would do is we would eliminate all the existing marks, and then what you would see is exactly what you're saying. It would say truck spot 1, and just like in an RV park, when you go towards the back left-hand side, there's a power drop, a water drop, and a sewer drop, and they would just be uniformly placed so that everybody is quite clear where their spot is and how to get in and out of it quickly.
Perfect. I think that would probably help to eliminate some of the parking confusion that currently exists if we don't get barriers up according to timelines, because technically that's not a certain.
Yeah.
Patrick, have you looked at the three versions of this?
Yeah, I went to Glenn and talked to him last week about it.
Which one do you like the best?
Where we're at, you know, because to me, East Side Market is like the basketball courts and all that's fine, but it's stuck off. Like he said, it's residential, it's off the beaten path. That was my biggest thing as we started analyzing. I went and saw. I actually went and saw a couple hours in the dark to see if I seen a lot of people moving in the view. You know, because I'm all about security. We don't want any kids messing with. We don't want any break-ins. So the cameras and lights was kind of on my mind. It's the youth were so far in the back. I'm just gonna pass right by.
Okay.
So both of those other locations are kind of just off the beaten path.
Okay, but actually, what I was talking about was the three layouts for Orchard, for the Orchard site.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. The one on top there is the one that we previously have. I've noticed that we need to, one pull out, not come in before the other comes in. So that's all confusion, whereas these other angles, we can, you know, even if we needed to take the fence down and highway off just a second, they could come in either side of the fence and get into these other positions pretty fast. But the one up top, like I said, we've been doing it, and it's just one has to move before the other comes in, and I have to time them just perfect, you know, for that.
So
So
the-
already established, new vendors come in, this is going to be a problem at the top.
So the existing one is just okay, the other two is more along the lines of what you would prefer.
Exactly, the other two are more on the
Okay.
Would there be plenty of space between trucks in those alternate layouts, or would that be pretty tight between, like, the walking space between each side?
And you're only gonna have maybe 5, 6, 7 feet between where your serving window is and where the next trucks.
So say it's spaced up, if they're at angle like
If they're
this.
at an angle like that.
Yeah, I think we could work with that, because the customer just comes up and they get their food, they just go to the tables anyway, and that's gonna be out in the open, so that it's no confusion, you know, no one's gonna go in behind the trailers, no one can really get hurt. We kind of have, you know, sort of like mine. If mine's off at an angle and my serving window's here, it'll be where in between me, the vendor, the next vendor and I, we have it blocked off where they can't keep walking through like a corridor. So little 5, 6 feet, yeah, I think that would be sufficient. But we could try it with 6 at first and see how it works. You know. But I think that's enough for space, because if you think 6 feet's pretty far. My other concern would be, you know, them crossing that street from over at the other lot. You know, there's only one little walk there. If we really get people coming, they're gonna come in droves of 20, 30 people at a time. From, you know, they meet there in their cars, their families come over. Might be a good idea if we paint some white lines across that highway, so everyone that's turning from the post office or coming from Main Street knows that this is a pedestrian walking area. Just an idea.
Nope, I think it's appropriate. Check.
There's no security at the bus stop at all?
No,
Why?
I couldn't answer that.
I'm not sure your question. Are you saying there's no camera?
Cameras, yeah, no security.
I don't know if we have any
cameras.
cameras at any of our buses.
Yeah, I mean,
But if that-
remember how recent our bus
I do.
system is. So we haven't gotten to that point where, you know, now this is their second year that the food pod's there, and, you know, Now it becomes a little more apparent that we might need to have some cameras. I mean, we just haven't felt the need.
Well, it kind of sounds like they're reviewing.
Sure.
You know, for the most part, I try to stay calm and talk to people, stay my distance, because,
Well, sure, but.
I get very irritated when you go there and talk to them. I say, hey, the police station's right there, you always go away. I always call these guys right here, hey, there's the guys right there, do you want me to call them, or do you want to act right and leave? And they always leave.
You know, Byron Mark's not here tonight, so I'm not sure why we picked that specific location for the bus stop. Is it possible that that could be relocated?
It's possible. I mean, the reason we picked it was initially because there would be potentially public parking there, and now if we're gonna change the use, we might wanna look at it. But part of it is also how the bus route's designed, and it needs to come through downtown, so it would take some looking at it, but it could be done.
Well, in the alternate layouts, it actually shows the relocating the bus shelter for the one layout.
And actually, I like that layout best, just because I think it protects Orchard a little bit more. And like you had indicated, if you had barriers in between so that people were walking in between, but they actually had to enter from, what's that street? Third Street, then they wouldn't be able to kind of walk out onto Orchard.
The Orchard alternate that you're talking about has a lot of strengths because the west property line is an alleyway that's already in place. So anybody coming to drop off their trailer can pull in from the alley, go down the center aisle, back in, and then go out through that new driveway without any conflicting traffic. So that's a nice one to lay out.
We're controlling the flow because we only have those two spots open in the fence. So either way, they have to come in. No one can just walk in from the side. We want to be able to see people who's coming in at all times.
Yeah, and I think we could do a better job fencing that off and controlling flow and painting and all that sort of stuff if we want to put that investment in there.
Right, I mean, again, this is a temporary, we're trying it out, so if we decide that's our spot, then we can really devote some more thinking and resources to how it can be set up.
I do like the butte idea, just from the standpoint that there's a lot of shade, there's a lot of soft landscape. You know, there's no landscape where this current one is, and you know, there's going to be potential restroom facility there. That'll be part of the new Funland project. You know, this has no restroom. Parking is off the street, so you know, you shouldn't have as much interference with people walking out into the parking lot or in traffic. Plus all the activities that are engaged at Funland is a great location. And you have some major employers in that area. Rocky Heights, right across the street, has lots of teachers. Hospital's right around the corner. Marlette's right down the street. UEC's right across the street. I'm over there. It's closer to my office. But there are some major employers in that area that probably would look for food alternatives like this. So, you know, I know that you've kind of created a location. I'm not sure you couldn't create the same sort of feel and vibe in this new location with shade and restrooms and a little softer family or friendly environment. Two of the items that are going to be built at Funland are actually shade structures. So you'll have shade and shelter there as well. So that would be my concern, is that the other one is just such a streetscape landscape. There's no, especially this time of year, no protection from the sun. It's hot. Other questions, comments? Yeah,
I've got one.
I'll share the microphone there with Lori.
My concern is that in the event we actually start having the kids coming back in with the soccer teams and all that type of stuff, if we have food pods that are there, and that's going to be making more of a competition for the kids to be able to raise the money that they may need to be able to actually fund the amount of money it's going to take for the soccer programs and such.
Larry, can you talk to that?
Yeah, so AYSO last year did not hold concessions in their concession area. It's been too difficult for them to recruit volunteers. And so they've given that up. I don't know if that's a permanent decision, but they're aware that we're considering a food pod in that location.
I will say that they did have it some of the games. They did have it open. It wasn't open all the time.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I talked to some of the moms, they're our customers, they're like, we can't find volunteers, we just want to get it up. Please come over there, because we're tired of dealing with it. We can't deal with our kids, get their clothes and doing that at the same time. So they're giving feedback on that. I'm like, but you guys have concession stands, we don't have volunteers. So just that attitude, they let us know what's going on.
Other questions and comments? No. Thank you, Clint, and your group, I guess, Larry, Diane, Patrick, for all of your input and research into this. You, I think, brought us back some great information to consider and review. I'm pretty sure the council is still interested in a food pod and supporting that concept. And now making some sort of significant investment to try and make it a more permanent design or location, I think, is our next consideration. Anything else from the council? You have anything else to add?
No, not to the food pod. We also were going to use, if we had a little extra time, to just talk through the mobile vending ordinance changes this time, because it's fairly related to the food pod, just how it interacts.
You want to talk through that?
Yeah, and I'm not going to run through the whole ordinance at all. It's 16 pages, but there were a few of the smaller things that I wanted to touch on, because what we've been doing with all of the city's code is these housekeeping changes, and so that's what we've been doing with this one too, trying to make the language clear wherever possible, get rid of the gender terms, all of those things. And even though it was a housekeeping update, I did see this as an opportunity to make just a few policy changes, and I wanted to run those by the council. The most important one is in section 1611 of the code, which adds in a potential for people to get a lunch truck license, where you could do from 11 to 1 at a construction site or an industrial location. It's not something that literally we've ever had anybody inquire about, but it is a pretty common feature in a lot of other mobile vending ordinances. So I wanted to add that in. We discussed it way back when the very first draft was coming, and it was something we decided we weren't ready for. But I've always had it in the back of my mind. I thought, okay, well, we're doing this housekeeping. Let's consider the lunch truck again. It would only be for self-propelled lunch trucks, no trailers, and only at industrial or commercial business parks, construction sites, retail sites, and any place that's ending with restaurants in it. Those would not be allowed places for lunch trucks. If council's uncomfortable with that, we can pull it out of the code and bring it back at the next meeting, know our feelings.
You've mentioned, you say you call it lunch truck, but then you also call it event truck? Is it the same thing?
That's a different one.
Okay.
So the lunch trucks are their own thing, and never actually had anybody approach us, but it's something that we've always had in the back of our mind, is something they've done. The event trucks are something that we do get a lot of requests for people saying, hey, I'm having a one-day sale, and I would like to bring in a food truck so that people see my business more, or I'm doing an open house for this house I'm listing, I'd like to have a lunch truck that day. So we're making an event license, because we get a lot of requests for those. I bet you 6 to 10 a year, up to 7 days, and that would be the only, and then it has to be removed overnight. That's one thing that we are adding in, that I do feel more strongly about than the lunch trucks. But the lunch trucks are there. The other thing is that we're clarifying the license renewal process, because right now it's kind of a free-for-all, and we found from a policy perspective, it would be really unfortunate if people who have had their vending license for going on 5 years now, and somebody came in and sniped the license out from under them, and somebody who's made Hermiston their home isn't able to vend this year. So we're clarifying the code so that preference is given for existing vendors first, and then beyond that, then it's a free-for-all. And then we're also just clarifying the policy for termination license right now. In the past, it's been very confusing as to what somebody would have to do to actually get a license terminated. And we're clarifying that if they were to sell alcohol in any form or have inappropriate food handler cards, if property owner revokes the permission to be there, any of those would be grounds. Any repeated violations of other city codes are grounds for termination. And then we clarified that should somebody have their license terminated, there is an appeals process that's consistent with our code enforcement. It would still go to the city's hearing officer, who would then be able to, in the past, we didn't have those provisions. So that's really all that has to be done. The big change being the addition to lunch.
Ms. Myers has been holding up her hand for 10 minutes.
I got tired of it.
Acknowledge it.
I never looked at her face, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. You kind of answered it. You started off with the work trucks, or what do they call them? Lunch trucks, sorry. And then you kind of answered it in the next thing. So like if Patrick, for instance, or anyone else, if they have another truck or wanted to take their food cart over to the Butte for an event, would that be?
The Butte would probably not be an appropriate example because the Parks Department has a different franchise agreement that they run when somebody's vending. But if Patrick were set up in the food pod or the food truck, Taco team that's at the cottage, had a second truck and wanted to run out to Walmart every day because that's an industrial site where the distribution centers, yes, it would be a separate license to do that sort of thing.
Okay, but the event thing you're talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking the lunch trucks. The event, yes, it was, you can come in and get a permit to do the special event. It would be from day 1 to day 7, and those are the only days that we go.
Well, right, and they have like,
Captain. Go turn on. Push it home.
okay,
Still not speaking. I don't care.
over. If you did that, like for when something was going on there, that would be permitted.
Yes.
Okay.
So do the event trucks still have to, or the food, lunch trucks, do they still have to qualify for the same health ordinances that are
Yes,
on license?
you still have to get your truck certified. You're still subject to all of our same design standards for supplying the garbage cans, all those things. It's just a shorter term license.
Health department inspection, all that stuff?
Exactly.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Was there a fee for the lunch license or the event license? Is there?
If the council passes it in this form, we will come back with a resolution for fees.
Okay.
Do you remember the conversation of why that was not required or included in the previous?
It was, from what I remember, it was a question of demand. And we were trying to get the mobile vendors that we had uniform and try to come up with the quickest way to do that, establish a basic set of operating guidelines, and other things can be factored in as things went along. So it's kind of pushed out because it was almost more than you could chew to adopt the ordinance in the form that it started in with the lunch trucks as well.
In your opinion, has this ordinance worked well? I mean, have people been compliant and it seems like it met the purpose or the intent of the original?
It has worked pretty well for doing basic sanitation, basic getting rid of some of the visual blight that we had. It works a little bit more challenging on the ability of people to find locations. It's a little restrictive is what I hear from a lot of the vendors. But I think if that's the intent, to make sure that we aren't overrun, then it's working very well from that standpoint.
That was the original intent.
Absolutely.
And that really was.
Yes, it was.
And I think this whole idea of the food pod allows for, the increased number of vendors without some of the light that we might have experienced before. Gives us a little more control over that.
The food pod by far has been the most it really gives an alternate path. You can go find a commercial site and negotiate with the property owner, pay a monthly rent, deal with all of the moving your truck every day, or go to the city's site, which has a lot fewer hoops to jump through, and the city has the ability to really control what's going on, and it's worked very well, in my opinion.
Maybe it'll be so successful, we'll have a food pod A and a food pod B.
It could happen.
That's the beauty right there. And another thing you guys want to consider, if you're bringing in more vendors, especially if there's class 3 luncheon trucks, if you've got a vacant building here in town, why not make it into a commissary and make money off that thing every month? These people come in, prepare their food, they have to pay monthly rent at that building.
The certified
Consider
kitchens
more
are a
revenue.
new thing that the health department is starting to allow, basically, a central location where a lot of vendors can prepare their food. Yeah, that is.
And the only thing is you will be subject to them inspecting you every year to make sure your kitchen is good and good, working order. And you, hey, Portland, some of those places up there charge $3,000 for one person to come in there a month because they're doing that much turnover.
There are several cities, Astoria, I want to say St. Helens, a couple other ones have developed communal kitchens that they are doing exactly that sort of thing. So it is something the city could consider long term.
A few mom and pop kind of bakery and pastry places here in town. I don't know where they all cook it all, if it's at home or whatever, but having a communal kitchen is, I'm sure would be a significant cost savings to some of these startup businesses.
Because they have commercial equipment, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question regarding, like when you said events or lunch, right? Being able to go to like Walmart, because that's out of city limits. I guess how far does this, or is it out of city limits?
It's
Okay, so it only anything in city limits?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'm just thinking for any players that are just outside of our city line, things like that.
We actually get that question a lot. You know, I want to be right next to this person who's up on the hill. You know, that's a different set of rules. You have to go contract into a county. A lot of people don't realize that the rules can be different
Right across the street.
right across the street. Exactly.
Thank you.
What other questions? Council? Anything else in there that you want to make us aware of?
No, I think
Okay. Anything, Byron, you thought that council may have issue with?
No, I think he highlighted the major policy changes as far as the ordinance.
So currently, if I want to have a food truck at my office for some celebratory event, I couldn't do that.
no, really, you can't.
Not in being compliance.
Yeah. Would not look good for me.
But wouldn't it be an event if he was having an event?
So if we approve this
Giving
one,
away the food, then you can have one. Because it's basically a catering truck.
okay, gotcha. Yep, gotcha. I'm gonna charge people. Make money off of food truck. All right, any other comments? Okay, we will take a short recess before we start our regular city council meeting at 7. Okay, I'm going to call the regular Hermiston City Council meeting to order. If you're just now joining us, we had a work session earlier to discuss Hermiston's food pod and the future of the Hermiston food pod and potential options of future Hermiston food pod. This, as I mentioned earlier, is our 4th location in the last 6 months, and we're still trying to figure it out. So we're still playing with the audio and the setup, but this is our first in-person city council meeting in several months. So it's nice to actually have an audience, people here to listen and participate. That is the only way to publicly participate at this point, is to show up. We do have appropriate physical distancing in place so that you can show up and participate and still feel safe. Everything has been sanitized and clean, and we'll do that in between speakers and all that sort of stuff. We do have the opportunity only to participate in public comment here in person, but you can still watch us on YouTube or through the City of Hermiston website. So you can watch us online still that way. Please, we do have a declaration of quorum, all members present this evening. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good to see all of our counselors this evening. Hopefully you guys had a nice Father's Day weekend. It's good to see our newest counselor back. Hey, David. Yeah, welcome back. We didn't scare you away last meeting, so that's good. Any changes to the agenda, Mr. Smith? No. Okay. So we're going to start out with our first presentation of the evening on wayfinding sign presentation. And we're going to lead that off with Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Clint's going to kind of give us an update of where we're at, and we're going to still use some technology to bring in a presenter. So
Awesome.
We are, and bear with us, we are working on, we've been working on the wayfinding signs now for about 6 months to 8 months, and running through public design sessions and some online surveys, and we've been working with the city's steering committee, which is made up of chamber members, ODOT, some community stakeholders, as well as individual stakeholder groups that our sign consultant, Merge Consulting, and Glenn Swaycap has been working on. And we had come up with 3 overall design options that were then whittled down to a preferred alternative. And this preferred alternative has 2 different options, a 4A and a 4B. And Glenn wanted to join you tonight to kind of run through how 4A and 4B work, and then get feedback from the council on which is the council's preferred option.
So does that mean Glenn is up now?
Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
No, not very well. Hold on just a second, Glenn. We can't hear you. It's not on your end. I think it's on our end.
Say something around.
Can you hear me now?
Now we got it.
All right, great. I'm going to share my screen. Host disabled attendee screen sharing. Well, you might have to share it with me, or for me. Okay. Get that.
Nice picture.
Yeah. So, like Clint said, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. We came and we presented 3 design options, and we whittled it down to option number 4. The intent of this project, as many of you know, is to replace what's out there and to come up with a unified design and look and system for the signage. So all of these signs that are out there now will come down and be replaced with a consistent system. That includes directional signs to downtown, park signs, visitor information, and the gateway signs along the outside of the town limits and the city limits. Just a little bit of a brief recap before we go into the design options, and I'm only going to take about 10 minutes to go through this, these presentations. We did a full analysis. We started to look at other districts that can be, you have the downtown district, but also a medical district, the South Hermiston Industrial District. So we're looking at zones and areas that we can, that can be understood by the first-time visitor. It helps that you have clustered destinations, like within the medical district and also in the industrial district, so we can start to look at those as districts and areas. We also are looking at the trails and how, because we know that that's a huge asset for Hermiston, and how we can identify those entry portals to those trails so that if you're driving down the road, you can see that over there, even if you're not going to the trail, but then it markets that you have that asset to the community. We're also looking at all the park and recreation signs, the identification signs for all of the parks, because that is also a huge amenity and destination within Hermiston. So part of our analysis, we look at how people arrive, whether it's a primary arrival, this is into downtown, and looking at maybe even future arrival points, secondary arrival points, and then coming up with gateway signs that announce your arrival and then also promote your brand as well. So with the gateways, we only had one design option for option 4, and this was the design option that was settled upon by the steering committee and a lot of our stakeholder groups that we had previously met with. So you can see how it's a dimensional cutout identity. It follows the brand logo, but it does it in more of a sculptural and dimensional way, so it's cut out. But we are using the colors from the brand. You can see how that sort of pops out there. There's some 3D IDs and renderings of that. What I wanted to show you and where we're trying to come up with the final design option is we're calling option 4A and option 4B. Option 4A is this sign system. We're looking at some of the signs where it's a smaller speed vehicular, higher speed vehicular, directing to public parking, the park and recreation signs, and then pedestrian, and then also those trail signs that I was showing you before. So with the vehicular signs, you can see that we're using the colors from the brand, bringing in pictograms for activities and also for parking. But you can see the black poles that match the existing streetscape within the downtown, using the same type style from the brand. But on the backs, we're doing these cutout graphics of watermelon from the brand identity, but keeping the backs, a plain silver look on the back. So it has a dimensional look, but also sort of a clean, contemporary look on the back. So these are some 3D renderings of what that bracket could look like on the back side of it. The park signs, same concept, having that bracket at dimensional and the park identification with the address. And you can sort of see how that would look in 3D there with the stone base. This stone base and concrete cap is going to be the same materials that are on Festival Street in that area, so it's all consistent and it all starts to work together. The downtown pedestrian signs and those trailhead signs, where we have a kind of a map of downtown, people can get information, and then also direct to destinations like the library or City Hall. And then the trail signs, like, identifying those trails from the highway. Option 4B is a little bit different. These are the same sign types, but it's a little bit more of a different configuration. Instead of using that bracket on the back of the signs, we're doing a cutout on the top that's similar to the streetscape furniture, the trash cans, the park benches, the bike racks that you have within the downtown area. So that's sort of that cutout in that black painted material. This is a back view of those signs. So they're the same sign types, but really, so the difference between the two options are really the way that the watermelon graphic is either cut out or it's used as a bracket on the back side. The park signs are a little bit different. We're looking at the Corten steel material cut out, and then also doing this sort of cutout graphic on the top there, like that. And then the trail signs are similar. We did have an option in there to maybe have the trail signs in that Corten steel look, sort of that brown look as opposed to the black. But the black follows what you have in the downtown streetscape, where this is more of a natural look to it. So, I don't know if you can see this. We did an online survey with those design options, and 90% of the responses picked option 4A, and one person picked option 4B. So the majority of the people are in favor of 4A. That's who took this online survey that we put up. We're also in the process of locating where the signs go and what they say. We've already done a second revision to this. So we have a sense of what we have to send to ODOT for their review and their approval. So we sort of know what the sign counts are going to be to a certain extent, about 90% of that. And we're starting to look at specific locations for where the signs are going to go and what they're going to say. So we have a full message schedule as well. So to close, the next steps that we're working on in July and August, we want to finalize all of those locations, and we want to submit our design to ODOT for their review. Once we pick a design direction, whether it's 4A or 4B, we want to prepare that design documentation, come up with a phasing plan and an order of magnitude budget, and then do a final site survey where we go out to each location with somebody from the city and with ODOT to actually locate exactly where those signs would go, and then we would have a full bid document that can be put out for bid and for pricing. So that's these are the two options. We'll start going back and forth here. You can sort of get an idea of what changed on those, and that's it. That's where we are with the designs.
Thank you, Glenn. Clint, are you wanting some sort of recommendation from the council?
We are hoping to get a 4A or a 4B recommendation.
Council, questions? Yeah.
Are those signs coated with like graffiti, propeller paint?
Yes.
Okay.
So they power washed off or something if it's graffiti. That was a question I had too, it's like a powder coated metal so that the paint is not something that's going to chip off or wear off in a year or two.
Glenn, can you clarify for the council what the final coatings on the signs would be?
Yeah, they're all Matthews paint for the poles. Actually, the poles would be the factory finish, similar to what you have in your streetscape. So it's it would be whatever that specification is, and usually that's a an industrial coating on those signs. We use automotive, our sign fabricators use what's similar to like an automotive paint for the sign components. It's a Matthews sign industry standard. All of the sign faces for the vehicular signs are all reflective graphics printed so that these are fully reflective during the day and at night. The park signs are router cut, or they can also be dimensional letters on there, but we were envisioning these to be more of a router cut, what you would typically see in a sign at a park. So these are not reflective here. But they're all typical sign making materials.
How are they for graffiti resistance and cleaning?
Yeah, they have anti-graffiti coating on them. So they can be cleaned from graffiti. They have anti-graffiti.
Good.
How many respondents were there on the survey?
11.
I think you've already answered this question, but I just would like to clarify that on the park signs, since you said those are router cut, those would then be transparent, and you could see through the letters on those signs. It would be like a white background on a black sign.
Question. Do you understand this
The,
question?
the first option would not is not router cut through. This would be almost like an etched and filled process for the lettering here. That was our intent. We were thinking. But this concept, they were actually going to be cut through and then backed with a color. So that was the intent on this one. So that for the park signs, that was the difference between those two. The first this option 4A is actually just one single panel here that would be mounted and screwed directly to the posts, whereas this one has multiple layers of panels on it.
So, Byron, we hired these guys to do the as our consultants to come up with the design, right? And then as far as the purchase of the material, it'll go out to bid to somebody else to make these?
Right, and this is a huge project
Yeah.
with the signs throughout the city. So in the budget that you recently adopted, it does have some funds to start that process.
Okay. That was my next question. This, as designed or described in this picture, wouldn't necessarily be what we'd be purchasing day one.
Correct.
Right, not everyone, we would implement it in
Phased
stages.
in over.
We don't have we're gonna wait to see some of his order of magnitude costs before we start seeing how much we can dedicate each year to that.
Will that be brought back to the council for review?
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be, once we pick a design, we just need that to go forward. And then as we implement, you will approve the budget before we spend money. But in the approved Hero budget, there is some money for signage.
See, what we're doing tonight is to try to come up with the final, I apologize. What we're doing tonight is to try to come up with the final preferred alternative so that the entire sign document can then be prepared. At this point, we need to know what the signs will look like to prepare the next phase of the signs and the planning. Then when that document is prepared, that entire sign design package will come back to the council for adoption.
So I don't see an actual action item on here, so do we just need a motion from the council?
Yeah. I mean, a motion, a consensus. Give us a nod that one of those two is where we want to go.
Other questions from the council?
I took the survey and I did make my selection, and I think.
You were the one beat?
No. No, I went along with the whole crowd. I don't know.
Why did you just?
I was the one who picked for me. Just like the watermelon on top.
Any other questions from the council? I would actually take public input if there's some public input this evening on that. Yeah, then can you, we're gonna have to sterilize that microphone. Thank you.
myself.
Yes,
give
please.
My address. Okay, I'm Kimberly Neville. I live out of Hermiston city limits, actually in Eargan, 305 Northeast 9th in Eargan. I am the director of the Hermiston Chamber of Commerce and want to show my appreciation to Clint and the city of Hermiston for including the chamber in this project. We believe that wayfinding signage is really crucial for tourism, and especially in our region, sports tourism is a huge deal. Especially before basketball tournaments, we get a ton of calls asking where certain schools are, where districts are, where's your downtown, where can I find this or that. And I truly believe that this wayfinding project will add to the livability of Hermiston as well and help with our tourism promotion. So I'm very excited about it, thankful to be a part of that team, and just really truly appreciative of the collaboration between the city and the chamber on this project specifically. And thank you to Glenn for his work and conference calls and emails and all kinds of things as we designed this. So I think it's really exciting for Hermiston, and I think that the council should be really proud of this project.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Yep.
We appreciate your partnership and working with us on this project.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions I was going to ask too. Are there specific, I think push the record button. Can you fix it for me? Are there specific ways to identify partnerships with the city? Meaning, say for instance, I wanted to have a sign that pointed towards my business or something in that direction, because currently
Wayfinding sites in general, we don't go down the partnership route.
Okay.
Because businesses can be very transitory, and there's the, well, if he got one, how come I don't get one? So we're trying to limit it to items of general public interest and to public facilities.
Okay. So school districts?
Yes, because they are public facilities.
So have we talked to the school district about partnering with them on making sure we identify their facility?
They are stakeholders in this, and so we have 4 different stakeholder groups, and the school district is one that Glenn has met with each time he has been here.
And they're not gonna put, their school signs aren't gonna look like this. We only the city.
Right.
So,
But if we wanted to say Hermiston High School,
yeah, I mean, they're included on the directionals.
Okay.
Stuff, yes.
other public comment?
Hi, Luke Pickerel, owner of Monte Vista Homes. I think it's a really great thing. I mean, it's really expensive, but especially marking those trails. As a person who sells housing to people who are moving here, for somebody to be able to drive down the road and see, that big trailhead sign, I mean, branding matters, and I think that's a really cool thing. And I would maybe remind everybody that revitalization was the #1 asset in the 2017 Hermiston livability study. So I think the people are on board with that as well. Good job. Kudos to you guys for taking this on.
Any other public comment? I'm super excited about this project. This has been one of my projects that I've wanted to accomplish for a long time. A long time coming, yeah. And you know what? Glenn and Clint and all the stakeholders that participated in it, you came up with a stellar project. Stellar design. You guys did a really, really good job. I'm really impressed. I think it's going to make a wow factor, kind of attention-grabbing impression. And I'm impressed with the outcome, and I'm super happy right now. So we just got to find the funds to pay for it now, Mr. Smith.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, so I would take a motion on voting in favor of one of those.
I make a motion that we go with option 4A.
Second.
Okay, and moved by Councilor Primer, second by Councilor Davis, that we move forward with option 4A. Any other conversation from the council? Okay, roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, that's 9 unanimous votes. I know it wasn't a vote that
Thank you.
actually was publicly required, so I wanted to make sure my voice was heard as well. So, get to vote on stuff very often. So good job, Clint.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the citizen input on non-agenda items. So if there are citizens that are here that would like to speak to the city council, not about a specific agenda item that we are currently addressing this evening, please come forward to the microphone up front. Introduce yourself by name and address. Limit your comments to less than 5 minutes and direct your comments to me. No takers. All right. Consent agenda items A through D. Are there any that the council would like to pull? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A through D? Moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Barone, that we approve consent agenda items A through D. Any public comment on consent agenda items? Seeing none. Roll call.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for accepting my nomination as your mayor again for another 4 years. Ouch. Ordinances and resolutions. Resolution number 2158, resolution readopting the financial policies and investment policy for the city of Hermiston and superseding resolution number 2135. Mr. K.
Mr. K.
You had before you two actual attachments of the investment policy. I want to talk about it first. The last time you reapproved all policies was in February this year, and I've decided between the time we do the budget in the spring and we do the CAFR at fiscal year end, I'd like to set this be the point in time of the year we readopt the financial policies every year as we're required to. Along with that, I'm going to be asking you tonight for one small adjustment in the investment policy, because we are approaching some really difficult times in the market. And I'd like to have a little more flexibility in the investments to invest in than what we have now that put money back into our economy and our sister states. So with that said, and I know this is on, the only thing I'd like to do is add municipal bonds as an allowed authorized investment type. It has not been in our policy to allow that, but it is a policy issue that the state of Oregon says is an acceptable investment by statute. So I'm not asking anything of the council that the state has not already said is okay. It's authorized under 294.03, and I'm telling you, if you really want to have trouble, don't want to have trouble going to sleep at night, go read these statutes, because they have varying interpretations of what that means. In general, what I'm asking for is the ability to invest in debt obligations in the states and political subdivisions, meaning counties, states, or rather cities and districts in the states of Oregon, California, Idaho, and Washington. That is what's in the statute as an acceptable investment. Yes. So I'm not asking more than what's in the statute now. The reason, and this is from Friday, these are what are called odd lot new agency offerings. I can't figure out how to do the pointer. But if you look over at maturity, the column, you see a 6-month bullet on the top line from Fannie Mae. The coupon's 1.875, but if you look at the yield to maturity on the far right, that's 8 basis points. That's 0.08% that I would get to invest it until December of 2020 right now. In the market, short-term bonds are virtually worthless as far as an interest-bearing investment. The farther you go out maturities, if you look down the maturity schedule, you'll see it gets better, but it's still anemic. That's what I'm limited to now as far as government agencies, okay? I give this to you for comparison, because now the difference will be here is the size of the issue. If you look at that Portland, Oregon Community College District, it's a $5,000 odd lot offering. and it has a yield of almost 63 basis points, almost 8 times what I can get from a federal instrument with a similar material. Most of these will be 4 to 6 times more in return than what the federal government agencies would be. But they are smaller issues, okay? So, again, in the near term, everybody's not doing good. The longer term, these obviously have better rates. A lot of jurisdictions allow municipal bonds. I put up 7 of all different sizes, but there's probably 50 to 60 jurisdictions that allow municipal bonds in the state because it's allowed by statute. And many of them mirror the statute. And what I'm proposing is that on page 8 of the policy, you simply allow me municipal bonds as allowed under the Oregon State Statute ORS 294-035. And under prohibited investments, whoops, went too fast. I will delete municipal debt under prohibited investments. Along with that change in the actual permitted and prohibited investments, you will see a definition or an outline of the credit risk. No more than the investable amounts can be 10% in municipal bonds, and no more than 25% in one issue. Now, a lot of jurisdictions have no more than 10%, but since these are such odd lot amounts, that if I'm on the margin trying to make just a little more, I'd like to be able to do more per issue because they're such small dollars. That's why I've asked for 25% with one issue. And that's the sum total of what I'm asking about on the investment policy tonight before you reapprove all of our financial policies.
So, Mr. Kay, when you say one issue, 25%, you're talking about the money you have available at the time to invest. You're talking
in the
total
10%
investment.
portfolio. Our investable portfolio is about $5 million and some change. I can only invest 10% of that in municipals. That means about $500,000. No more than 25% of that $500,000 can be in one issue.
Okay.
That's the limit. It'll probably be much less than that, but that gives me some latitude if I find an attractive odd lot that is of that size.
Why were municipal bonds excluded? I guess just seeing that our neighbors down the road and other similar sized cities, just other diverse, you said 50 to 60 other agencies have done municipal bonds. Why have we not done it? Is it a matter of just kind of cleaning up, or is this something that I guess, why the change?
Well, it's just, historically, the policy's been what it is. And I asked for a change to invest in corporates a couple of years ago. The council was kind enough to allow that. We have reaped the benefit of those operations, those opportunities. This is just another opportunity to, on the margin, try to make our investment dollars work a little harder.
And I don't know why the history, unless the counselor remembers why.
I don't remember the history either when we implemented the original policy. I guess the only caution I would have is municipal governments aren't riskless. As we're seeing currently, some of them are significantly struggling and, are even talking bankruptcy and insolvency. And so I think there's a risk that's engaged and involved with that process. I think we just have to do prudent evaluation of all of those. And I would probably discourage any college investment.
I'm a belt and suspenders kind of guy. I wear belt and suspenders when I need to because I'm conservative in spending any money in an investment where there is risk involved. Remember the 3 laws of investment. Never lose the principal. First off, it has to be liquid. Never lose the principal. Then try to make it. I will not lose money. I promise you that. I will not put the city at risk to lose anything in an investment portfolio.
The one thing he didn't point out when he had it there is there's still a standard of a bond rating for any that we would invest in. So that's a little more security on that side.
Now, to give you just a little more comfort, there's been only one default in the last from what I understand, 50 years. And that was when they lost a killer whale at the Oceanside Aquarium somewhere on the coast. That aquarium went belly up in that city. That's the only default that I was able to find on a bond issue of that jurisdiction. Nobody else has ever defaulted. Now, we are in unique, never-before-seen times. I would not be buying a bond from a city who is dealing with the dire straits as you described. I will let it sit in cash and earn 3 to 5 basis points before I do that.
Any other questions?
Is that failure over a big bang when they blew up the whale?
No. I think he was talking about the whale that beached on the
Oh,
coast.
they had a killer whale in the aquarium that they set free.
Yeah.
And attendance went down because they lost their star
Not the
track.
same incident. No.
Not the one that beached itself.
Okay, so we do have a motion. I would accept a motion to approve Resolution 2158.
So moved.
I heard Councilor McCarthy first, so I'll give him the credit. It's been moved by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Hart. We approve Resolution 2158, a resolution readopting the financial policies and the investment policy for the city of Hermiston, superseding Resolution number 2135. Public comment. Seeing none. Roll call. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Resolution number 2159, adopting a volunteer handbook. Mr. Smith.
Yes, so last year, we had some conversations with city county insurance services, our insurance carrier, related to the various volunteer boards and commissions that we have, mostly, and also some of our volunteers, long-term volunteers who volunteer at the library or other places in the city. And they recommended that we have some sort of a policy or a handbook for them, like we do for employees, that just kind of explain their role, explain some things, and that we were able to kind of give that to everybody as they started any volunteer service with the city. And so we've been working through that over the last year, and what's before you is that type of a handbook. And it really is just kind of basic, almost like employment policies, but more just, this is how you can function as a board, this is kind of your role, those types of things.
Good. I think it's an awesome idea. I don't know that this was in place when any of us signed up, and we understood our volunteerism and the roles and responsibility for this, and whether it was at a council level or a committee level, I think it's important that everybody understands what they're committing to, and actually the responsibilities that are required of it and the legal consequences of violating those, because there are some, and people need to know that ahead of time, that what they're getting into, make sure that they don't step in those pitfalls. And I think that that's a excellent opportunity to try and put it all together in one booklet that we can hand out to everybody. So the process would be to all current committee members and volunteers, and then any future. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, correct. What we want to do initially is I will go and make a visit to all of our committees and commissions. I like to do that just to touch base with those people who help us in volunteering that way. Explain to them what it is, and then each of the existing members of those commissions would get a copy. And then we would do that periodically. For new commissioners, we could have a training. We did that with the league. About 3 years ago, we had the league come in, open it up to cities around us as well. And so we'll then try to get our new members a handbook as they start their service.
Any other questions?
I think it's a very good idea. There have been, not many, but a few issues over the years of people not understanding what the role of their committee was. And it's just a good thing to have in writing.
And I think it also puts some policies and practices in place where there are some expectations of when you do sign up for this committee that you actually show supportive participant, and, you know, some social media parameters and some recommendations, which I think we're seeing presence of recently, and so having some ability to, you know, let people know what their expectations are when they sign up for this work.
And it safeguards the city.
Yeah, safeguard the city, and safeguard the volunteer, they can always say no.
Yeah, just if you don't want to do it, here's the rules, go do it.
Yeah. And I think there's a more formalized format versus, well, this is kind of how we do things around here, you know? I think it's a better process. Other comments, questions? Yes?
Is there any additional handouts or material beyond the 12 pages that are included in our attachments, like other resources, maps, or here's some useful information you should have? Is there anything else going into the handbook?
No, what we plan for this handbook will be basically what you see in your packet. Each committee, you know, the department that oversees them might also give them some additional information and have additional training for them. For example, I know there's often training for planning commissioners because that's a very detailed subject area. But no, this will be the kind of the basics, and then you can augment it for different areas that they serve in.
Any other council comments, questions? Can I get a motion to accept the proposed volunteer handbook?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Smith, that we accept the proposed volunteer handbook. Any public comment on it? Okay. So do I need to get a motion to approve the resolution rather than accept the handbook?
Yeah, I think that's, we need to adopt the resolution.
Okay, that's my mistake. I'm looking at alternatives and recommendations, and so I should have went down to requested motion. Motion, can I get a motion to approve resolution 2159 adopting the volunteer handbook?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Smith didn't want to follow. All right, so it's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Barone, that we approve resolution 2159 adopting the volunteer handbook. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Ordinance number 2306, amending chapter 116 for mobile food vendors. Mr.
Yeah, we spoke about this at the work session. The two major policy changes would be allowing a lunch truck license and then also the event license. And then with some clarifications on appeals and revoking a license, things like that are added in this revision.
So the point of conversation by the council would happen now or after our action and before adoption?
I would say, I mean, typically we've done it after the motion.
Okay, so let's read it in then. The mayor requests first reading the ordinance be read by title only and calls for a roll call.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it passes unanimously. Mr. Luisi.
First reading of ordinance number 2306 by only reading the title. An ordinance amending chapter 116 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances relating to mobile food vendors.
Mayor requests that the ordinance be put on for final adoption at this meeting and that the second reading be by title only and calls for a roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion passes unanimously. Mr. Luisi.
Second and final reading of ordinance number 2306. 2306. All right. An ordinance amending chapter 116 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances relating to mobile food vendors.
Thank you. Can I get a motion that ordinance number 2306 be adopted and become effective 30 days after adoption by the city council?
Moved. Second.
And moved by Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Mr. Harden, that we approve ordinance number 2306 be adopted and become effective 30 days after adoption by the city council. Comments by the council? Any questions, further questions, clarification? Everybody get all their questions answered? So two major changes, the lunch truck, the event trucks, the event licenses.
Right.
There's no limitation on the number of licenses per year. You can have
No.
10 a day if you want. Okay.
There is not.
Okay. I like the idea.
Give it a try and see how it works.
Another question? How about public comment? Any public comment, Tom? Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Miranda Vega Rector, 1900 Northwest Prickly Pear Drive is where I live. I have lived in Hermiston on and off since I was 18. I went to school at the NCC, then Eastern Oregon, moved to Minnesota, came back recently. I have been working with Patrick, and today I actually met Clint because I've been talking about opening up a food truck. I can make some killer Indian tacos and Puerto Rican food because I'm half Native American and half Puerto Rican. I love the idea when Clint brought up the lunch trucks, and I hope that you guys vote for that to pass because I have two children. One is 3 and one is 1. And my three-year-old is very high special needs. I'm her full-time caretaker, and so we're involved in a lot of our special needs community here. And just hearing you guys take into consideration the handicapped, space at the food pods and all that, it kind of warms my heart because when you don't live that life, you don't really know where we're coming from when that you have to leave that family member in the car to go get food and whatnot. So my husband works full-time and takes care of us, and I love to cook. It's always been my passion. I've been very involved in Hermiston and the church here and whatnot, doing cooking events and stuff like that. And I would love to open up a food truck, but it's hard time. Time for me is hard to find because I'm busy. And a $12,000 to $15,000 investment for a food truck, plus all of the money I have to pay for applications and whatnot, it's a lot of money. So it's easily $15,000 to $17,000 just to get started, and that's a lot for us. So I think a food truck to do a lunch at a place, if I had a business that allowed me to do lunch once a week there or whatnot, would be very beneficial to our family. I do know, I've seen it before, and I've had other family who lived in Hermiston who said, oh, we've had trucks at our businesses before. They might not be doing that and getting caught, but I want to do it and not have to worry about that. So that's just my comment. I appreciate you guys taking this into consideration.
Thank you. It was Amanda.
Miranda.
Thank you. And we put inclusive on our sign because it's important to us. Inclusive means everybody. And so being able to have accessibility to handicapped or whatever the issue is that you couldn't access a food truck is important. And so we want to make sure that we're taking those things into consideration in the ordinance. So thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Okay. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Clint, for bringing this back to us and all the research that you and your group did, and Patrick for your support and helping develop the food pod and hopefully continue to grow that area. Hopefully this makes it easier for you to make it more accessible, and we keep adding more vendors. I look forward to her tasting her Indian tacos. So. All right, thank you. Now we're on to financial reports for May 2020. Mr. Kay.
I have come to understand you all appreciate brevity, so I'm not going to talk very long. This is the Urban Renewal Agency in very good shape as we approach the fiscal year end. We actually made 4% more than we thought we would in revenues, and he has managed his dollars wisely and has not spent as much as he possibly could have this year. He has big plans next year, as you saw in the budget preparation. I got to get thin, skinny in your fingers. Actual revenue in the general fund this month was $543,000, not quite the drop that we had seen in prior months, but it is still yet a continuation of the effects of COVID-19. I anticipate we will see an improvement in June because we're opening up the pool, what day?
Wednesday.
birthday?
24th. So we might get some revenue the last week of the month to offset the expense opening the pool. And it'll be open, whatever. But I really think that we will see a hit in revenue in June because we have been so late getting things started that produce revenue. On the expense side, we're 167,000 below projected. That's due again to the concerted effort of the department managers spending only on mission critical issues, not discretionary spending. I think that will continue through June. Everybody is always leery of spending money right before the end of the fiscal year. I appreciate the general fund managers doing that. My message to them every time we have a department head meeting is, if you don't need it, don't spend it. And they've been very compliant helping us do that. I think we will see an uptick on the expenditures in June, again, because of the expenses opening the pool and getting people on board as lifeguards and staff. But I don't know what that effect is going to be. It's a big question mark. As we approach year end, we are right now projecting an ending fund balance of $2.3 million. I think it will be a little higher than that, simply because I just feel like we're not going to hit that $1 million in the expenses, and I think the revenue will not drop too far. So I'm hoping on that. Right now, at that projection, we will be at 1.47 times our minimum reserve, and I'm going to guess that's where we hit it. I was only off 85,000 for May, so I feel pretty good that I'm getting a better handle on our cash flow. Utility and street funds, we're going to end on a very positive note with all of them. Yes, we have a couple of places that resources is below what we projected, but the expenses, they're way below what was anticipated. There'll be a little catch up this month in a couple of the funds, street and utility, but by and large, we will end the year in a pretty good place for all utility funds and street. Too far? Hold on. This is our financial report on, I'm going to quit talking about the airport master plan project because it's just going to sit there like that for a while. Northeast water tank, this project is 96% complete by billings. I believe we're going to be almost done with that in the next week or two, as well as the cathodic protection on the tank. So there will be new projects coming up in the CIP, but these are going to go away fairly quickly, if not in the next 30 days, for sure in the next 60 days. But the airport improvements will be there forever. And then finally, on the investment report, we have a $1,051,000 instrument, if you look up there in the agencies, that matures in July of 2020. We have $125,000 that will mature in October. And you can see that the instruments in the corporate bonds that are maturing are carrying a coupon rate of 2.15%, 2.35%. They will not be reinvested anywhere close to that level of return. The corporate bonds, that $125,000 may very well be somewhere in the 2% range. But that $1,051,000, I'm going to have to do some digging to find some instruments in our agency portfolio that pay something that's not so anemic as to be almost invisible. And I mentioned again, LGIP lowered their rate to 1.3. I've talked to a number of my compadres around the state and advisors, and they don't understand how the state can keep supporting a rate of 1.3% as the stated rate in the LGIP. That has got to fall as the markets and the effect of what's going on in the markets hits their holdings. I'm just wondering if they're trying to buy deposits. I don't know. But that can't hold long term for the next, I think, 60 days. It has to come down. Because you saw the agencies and things, the rates aren't just there. Now, they get to invest in things I can't, like troubled assets and some exotic stuff, but even that is not paying what it should. So I just want to make you aware, we got a lot of money coming due in the next 4 months, and I'm going to do my best to make as much as I can on it, and I promise promise you I won't lose any of them. Any questions I can answer for you?
Mark, on your investment profile, you don't have a rate of return on that large one that's coming due. How come?
It is what's called a bullet. We did not pay $1,051,000 for it. We probably paid something like $998,000. It's called a strip. So you get the money, and then you get your return at maturity. It's a bullet. There's no intervening return.
But it doesn't tell you what you made on it?
I'd have to go back and find the purchase price. I'm thinking it's about $50,000 to $75,000 from what we bought it for what it's maturing for. And you don't really get a rate on that. You just know what the maturity is and what you're going to pay today. And I probably should have had that answer for you. I will get it for you.
And the only other comment I have is hopefully we don't ever have taxpayer discretionary funds that aren't necessary investments or expenses.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the financial report? Okay. Mr. Smith, are you going to speak about the CARES Act funding in your, is this?
I can.
I didn't know if you were going to do it under your manager's report.
I can in my manager's report.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to hear that. Okay, any other questions from the council on the financial report? Thank you, Mr. Kay. Can I get a motion to accept the financial report as presented? Second. It's been moved by Councilor Davis, second by Councilor Trimmer, that we approve the May 2020 financial report as presented. Any public comment? Roll call. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Property acquisition authorization, Mr. Smith.
Yes, so as a portion of the City Hall project, we need to acquire the 2 parcels that are to the east of the current City Hall property in order to have adequate parking for a new and a larger facility. So we have worked with the owner and come to a price of $400,000. That is comparable to based on rents and the approach that an appraiser would take. And we, in the sales agreement, there is a requirement that, if the appraisal comes in differently, we renegotiate the price based on the appraisal. And
Up or down?
Up or down. Mostly thinking down, I think, was the hope. But and then there's also the ability for us to leave the transaction if for some reason we decide, the council decides not to authorize the funding for the project as far as selling the bond. So this is just some piece we needed to have in place so we can continue to move forward with the project. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yes.
I have 2.
Can you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
I have 2. Okay, first of all, in the original presentation of this, wasn't this building like an exchange?
Well, that is still the hope, and we are working with the county and the agreement we've made verbally with the county is that if the exchange doesn't work, the city would own the county building and then sell it for its value. So in essence, we would still be exchanging it. But there's a chance that the current owner might want to do an exchange on another piece, another property. And so he hasn't confirmed that yet, but he's still looking at that as an option.
Because that is how I remember that. Being
Right.
presented.
Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping that it will still be, but we may need to have a little delay as far as selling the county property.
And then the owners, are they going to be okay with if it doesn't go through, if it doesn't go
No,
through?
They understand. Yeah, it's written in the agreement, so.
All right.
So this would solidify the ownership of the property from the east edge of the parking lot against the old Sears building,
Correct.
all the way to
Yeah, it really does help us, even adjusting that existing lot into adding more spaces, really, we can make it more efficient. So,
And create some flexibility, I would imagine, in design and building too, you're not as limited.
correct.
So we already own the parking, right?
Well, we own the parking lot up to the,
But we don't own the parking strips next to the building, right?
right. There's a little bit of parking that belongs to the building, and this agreement is to buy both. They're two very narrow lots, and one's the building, one's the parking.
And the 8 parking spaces or whatever. that
Yeah, I think
is.
there's 12 or something, yeah.
Any other questions from the council? Okay. Can I get a motion to authorize the city manager to finalize the purchase agreement for Lime Building? So moved. It's moved by Councilor McCarthy, second by Councilor Smith, that we approve City Manager Smith to finalize the purchase agreement for the Lime Building. Any public comment? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Now you can go, Jeff. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes? Yes. Go.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. So now, on to city committee and liaison reports. Anybody?
We had a Parks and Rec meeting on June 11th, and Mr. Fetter gave an update on all the current things going on, the pool, the Funland project, the riverfront park, and then we had a windstorm recently, and we talked about some of the damage and some of the, he just gave us updates. We hadn't had a meeting in 2 or 3 months, so it was a lot of information. It was good information and lots of things to do. I think I covered it all.
Skate park.
Oh, it's going to roll on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of exciting things going on.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of dates that came into play at that meeting, and then there was also the Teen Adventureland grant that looks incredible.
Another exciting addition to the community. Mr. Fetter, there's another grant out for that park still currently. Any timeline on that?
Yeah, typically it would have already happened, but a lot of state projects have been delayed for various reasons. So that final grant hearing will be probably in September, certainly in the fall. We'll know shortly after that if we're going to get another $271,000 toward that project.
Thank you.
Yes, we also had a Hispanic Advisory Committee. In that committee, we went over a couple of resources. Martha's House is available. There's been a lot of concerns because of COVID that there wasn't a lot of space available there, but it is still available. There has been actually no uptake since COVID started at Martha's House, so they encourage our committee to let the community know that that's still an option. Talked about resources like the Coffee House. Also, about where he came, they're Latino community-based organization here in the area, and they presented the Oregon Worker Relief Fund. They're one of the navigators for that project, so if anybody is looking to apply to that Oregon Worker Relief Fund, they're a navigator in our area that definitely can help out. They also have services in Long for people that speak that Guatemalan dialect to be able to access those services. And other than that, Larry came and presented the Parks and Rec plan, Funland Park once again. We got a little bit of input on the Latino cultural aspect of Funland Park. Potentially have a local artist that might help out in sculpting or painting a mural at that location. So that's one of the things that we're working on. And other than that, I guess
Mr. Reed was there and we talked about the help the city can do with people struggling right now to make payments and their bills. They wouldn't work with them. So they can pay a little bit of money on this bill, pay the current bills. And so they can kind of pay the, what they're behind the bills.
Have we seen a significant uptick in that?
We're seeing just a little bit over what our normal is, both on the water and sewer and electric side. And now actually, that was one of my report items, but I wasn't able to share with the Hispanic Advisory Committee any of the details, but just today, Amazon Web Services announced that they're donating a large amount of money into different programs. One of those is to help with electric utility assistance. And so Hermiston Energy Services received $75,000 for us to help. You know, each year we budget some to help folks that are struggling with their bills. And so we'll have this additional $75,000 to work into that. And we're working in concert with UEC, so our policies are similar as far as who qualifies and those types of things. But that's very exciting. They're also giving a lot of money to other programs throughout the community.
Yeah, that Amazon Web Services in partnership with UEC. UEC is a nonprofit entity that gives back to its ratepayers. It's a co-op, and so Amazon Web Services is a large user of electricity, and so they were getting a large kickback. Amazon Web Services said in return, refund, sorry. That was inappropriate word. Strike that day. Refund for their use of the services because of their large ownership in the co-op. And so they said instead of giving that refund back to the corporation, they wanted to return, I think, all of it to the community. And it was a substantial amount of money. It's $500,000.
I'd have to do all the total.
I mean, it's a lot of money that's coming back in the community.
Yeah, it's 350. Yeah,
it's 400. Yeah. So some of it to help offset people's water, electric bills, utility bills. There are some small business funds that are going in there as well. Some specific allocations to tribes in each of the cities around in the UEC district. So really big announcement by them today to infuse the community with $350,000 or $400,000 that they didn't have to give back. You know, so I understand that they are a tax exemptee, and so there's some pushback on that for the tax exemptions. But I think they want to be a good community partner. I think they're showing that in this reallocation of the refund money back to the community, especially in this situation that we're dealing with in COVID and people being laid off and employed and that sort of stuff. So I think that'll be good money to be put back into our community to help those people. So I wanted to say thank you to that action.
And the other thing is to please talk about is the regional economic outlook.
The regional economic outlook, we talked about it a couple of council meetings ago, just kind of along with the budget, how we're trying to be conservative, but we're hopeful that the economy will continue in a good direction.
Good. Any other community or committee reports? Mayor's report. Just kind of talk about what I wanted to talk about. I don't have anything else. Councilors? Yes.
My offer still stands. I've got it set for July 11th, Saturday.
Oh, you're talking about your bus to go over to Walla Walla for a wine tour.
Right.
That's not the way back, but he really wants to let us all up,
So this is to go over and see the stepping stone projects at Walla Walla. And Lily has sent around an email, right, requesting all the counselors to participate and get back to her if you're able to go. I think you've extended it to the city administration as well.
Anybody that the city wants to be part of it.
Anybody that wants to participate. So how many people you have room for in your bus? 24 passengers. So got to cap it at 24, Lily.
She's asking whether you want a morning session or an afternoon session.
Yep.
That's most convenient. whoever says.
So you're doing 2 sessions? Thank you for your generous offer, Councilor. Appreciate your willingness to drive us over there.
I think Stepping Stones also has their, getting their website up and they had interviews to list what the most commonly questions that people are asking. So go on the website so people can learn.
That's right, you're on that. Probably need to add that one on here. Any other committee reports? Oh, we're on the council reports. Sorry, that was yours. Yes, Mr. Brown?
So, before you, council tonight, I actually have proposed a letter. I hope all of you have read it up until now. It really is a proposal in support of this Oregon Worker Relief Fund. I stand before you guys today as a proud son of immigrants. And in speaking of inclusivity, I would like us as a council to support this in however way as the community of Hermiston that would look like. Before you, there are a number of action items on this letter, and I would just ask you to review them and see, I guess, the level of comfort in being able to support this program. There are a lot of Oregonians and a lot of community members that have been hurt as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I think this letter would be a great example of inclusivity and trying to help our local community members. So I just wanted to present it before you guys today. I wanted to see if anyone on the council had any questions. And also, again, feel free to reach me personally, my cell phone, email. I'd love to talk to you guys a little bit more about what this means to me and what this means to a lot of community members. So that's what I have to ask. I guess I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Can you better explain what the Oregon Community Workers Fund is and its purpose or intent?
Yes. So the Oregon Worker Relief Fund was established during the last emergency legislative session. It's a fund that's meant for immigrants that weren't able to receive the stimulus fund. So when the whole stimulus fund went out, there was a lot of undocumented immigrants that were left out. I do want to remind a lot of our community members that we have a lot of school children, and so I guess when you think of an undocumented immigrant, I want you guys to also think of families, people that also regularly use the services here and contribute to the local economy. And if nothing else, for the compassion aspect. The Oregon Worker Relief Fund at this point sits at $20 million, and it's designed, like I said, with the Valkyrie. There's 20 community-based organizations in which one can apply through, and Valkyrie is one of them. Originally, this was going to be set through the unemployment department, because obviously this is more like a refund and assistance. But I'm sure a lot of us can understand if someone that's undocumented were to apply to like the unemployment department, what fears that might have or anything on the state level. And so that's why the legislature, and I want to really give a shout out to Greg Smith and Bill Hansel, our representatives, for supporting this initially. And they understand that going through community organizations, community-based organizations, people are more comfortable going to a local organization that they understand, that they know has fought for their values, rather than to go the very technical route through like the state, especially when we think of things like public charge and things like that. So, I'm not gonna lie, I was very nervous explaining this to everyone on the council. I know what it means sometimes to a lot of people, but I know what it means to me. I know what it means to families that I talk to. I know what it means to community members that I've spoken to. And I know what it means to family members very close to me. So I guess like I said, I really wanted to talk to the council about this. And again, I really encourage personal conversations. If anybody wants to have a personal conversation regarding mean, not only this issue, but, you know, difficult issues. I mean, that's what it's all about, and I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to share my thoughts, and, you know, that's how it should be. So I guess if anybody has any more questions, I'll be willing to answer those.
So you had a couple specific requests in there, maybe you can outline those and talk more about those specifically.
Yes, ma'am. So some of the requests, like I said, the requests below are, I guess I would like to see an endorsement of the Oregon Work Relief Fund. If we can endorse the relief fund, I think it sends a very powerful message to the state that, you know, even rural communities like Hermiston understand that, you know, we have a lot of people in our agricultural sector and just in our community that mean a lot to us. There's other asks from this letter that I wrote to the council, sending a letter to our state representatives and senators, you know, urging their support. I understand that they're actually in session, or that there is going to be a session soon, or maybe it's starting right now. And so if we can send them a letter to urge their support, and other than that, you know, like I said, there are more asks if the city is available or able to do these and carry these out, some of which, you know, might involve lobbying capacity at the state level, and some of them might also be an allocation of even financial funds to the Oregon Worker Relief Fund. I will be very careful when I say that, because the last thing I want to do, and I know from a fiscally responsible manner, I don't want to put money into the fund only for it to go to someone in Portland, you know, a community member in Portland, which I understand how that looks, and I understand what that means. And so I would support if we did contribute anything like that, that they would be going to a Hermiston resident specifically. And I've spoken to the fund and the people that run it, and that's a very common ask. And so I think if people are wary about allocating monetary funds for this, I understand, but I also want to keep the money in the community as well, so if people do receive funds, or if we do allocate funds, I would like for them to stay in the community. But that being said, really overall, I just would like for the city to support this in however way it looks. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a monetary ask, but I would like to see at least a strong support, maybe a letter, or at least to our representatives, so have our back on in Salem.
Thank you, Roy. You know, I just want to, I guess, applaud you for your convictions and for your bravery, you know, in having a conversation with the community about something that's potentially controversial, and bringing forward your personal beliefs about this issue and personal connection to that, and how meaningful it is to you. And so I appreciate your willingness to share that with us, and how important it is to you, and how important it should be to our community. So I just want to applaud you for that, so thank you. You know, Mr. Smith, the CARES Act funding that we haven't had a conversation yet about, there's some allocation for community support, and there's some Treasury guidance that allows for some flexibility in that. And I think maybe we could incorporate a conversation around funding for the Oregon Worker Relief Fund in some sort of capacity. I don't know where that's at in the budget, and if you've identified those resources and how they're being spent, but I'd certainly support something like that. And I'd also support a letter of thanks and a letter of support to Representative Smith and Senator Hansel in further support of the fund. If there's another round of CARES relief funds, which I think there will be at future emergency board conversations, that they continue to fund that. I think the allocation, it's almost all dispersed or similarly dispersed. In supporting the folks within our community. I think there's a significant percentage of those individuals that reside, unfortunately, in the shadows around us. making sure that they're also represented in any sort of stimulus to the community that we can serve.
Would now be a good time to endorse something like this, since the legislature is going to be...
But they're not going to be just talking about it in this emergency session.
Okay. Well,
But there will be a future emergency board conversation or potentially another legislative session. But I didn't see that on the agenda, that they're going to continue to have CARES funding distribution conversations at this session. And it starts Wednesday, right? And it starts Wednesday. And I think Wednesday, Thursday is all they're scheduled. So I didn't see that on the list of conversations at this one, but there is more CARES Act funding that hasn't been allocated that I would guess the legislature is going to act on later. So some sort of letter in support of that to our representatives, I think would be good. I'd be in support of that. How's the rest of the council feel about that? Any issues, concerns, comments? Yes,
I
no.
want to echo everything what we're talking about. People never realize how hard we work in the fields. I used to work in the field. And when you go home and you eat salads, lettuce, tomatoes, you need to remember there was migrant people that worked and put the food in the stores. But sometimes we work in the shadow because we don't have the documentation to be working legally in the United States. So these folks, they come around the families that they don't qualify for the federal stimulus money. And I went up now, Senate and representative, they pushed Oregon to do not allocate the $20 million to provide services for the people that work in the agriculture. So, yeah, I was supportive.
Yeah. And I think they also made some additional funding for farm workers in the form of PPE, sanitation, and allowing for some funds to be used in farm worker environments to help keep people safe. And I think that's important to recognize that that's a high-risk environment. So, thank you. Others? Yes, Ed?
I just have a question concerning, we've spoken a lot in regards to this in terms of undocumented immigrants, people of that nature. Would there be potentially other people who would fall under this fund who could meet other requirements?
Thanks, Tammy, for your question. I believe also, I guess anyone that really wasn't eligible for the federal stimulus fund, and most of those people end up being people that were undocumented. But again, for instance, there are also DACA recipients that didn't receive any funding for this. There were, if you had a husband and a wife that were married and one of them had papers and then the other one didn't, the family didn't receive any federal stimulus money, even if they had 4 American kids. And so it's very tricky how things are done. But I guess to answer your question, it is going to cover a little bit more, but I guess just everybody that really didn't receive any stimulus funds during the CARES Act.
Do you have any other questions, Ed? Other council members? Other council thoughts about that as far as the letter? Would a letter from me be appropriate to the senator, representatives?
Yeah, we've already worked hard on it and gotten it passed, and I think that would go a long way to possibly keep them on track.
Yeah, no, I think a letter thanking them for their original support and then encouraging them to seek out additional funds to fulfill or backfill the fund to keep it going throughout the rest, especially the summer and the fall season. We see a lot more influx of those members in our community. How about other council comments? Council reports? Nothing? Okay. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, I have just a few items to talk about. First, you may have seen a Facebook post about partnership we worked on with the City of Stanfield and Umatilla County. The City of Stanfield has opened up their composting facility to allow storm debris to be taken to that from anywhere in western Umatilla County. And so we really appreciate their partnership with us. And so if you have some items that need to go there, 7777 pound, you can get into the yard and drop your debris there, and then they will chip it and compost it. So
Yard debris.
yard debris.
Concrete, rubber
No.
tires, batteries. none of
No,
that.
trees, brushes, brush, shrubs. Those
Clarification. And that was a partnership with the county, I mean, county or the city's funding it, both?
Both, all three of us are contributing in some way. They're all helping, so.
Thank you for that partnership.
Then,
Hold on just a second.
And you have until July 19th?
correct,
That's through July 19th, so we've got a month.
right.
Okay, awesome.
Then, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk about the HES funding that came from Amazon Web Services. And I did go through and add up all those. It is $525,000 according to.
My math was pretty quick.
Man.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
But they're also giving money to each of the school districts in this side of the county and to the IMESD for virtual learning and connectivity to try to help students be able to do any online learning. And then also money to the local food banks in our communities as well. So it's really a great contribution from what is becoming a large employer in our region. So appreciate that. As far as the CARES Act goes, we were required to put together a grant agreement between us and the state to get our reimbursement, and that was approved last week. And so we should be seeing approximately $80,000 from the state for what they're calling the first round of the CARES Act funding coming to cities and counties. At least the last information I saw, the governor and the legislative leaders have accepted at least partially the proposal of how to distribute the rest of the money that was supposed to come to cities and counties. And so I think there'll be some more work on that, but there will be some, I think, an opportunity for us to put forward a plan that shows this is what we would spend this type of money on based on the Treasury guidelines, hopefully, that would potentially allow us to do what was suggested as far as the worker relief fund or other business support programs. We've spent about $15,000 already on this business support program that we worked with the county on, and we were not able to seek reimbursement on that in this first round. The state wouldn't allow that, even though it would fall under the Treasury guidelines from the federal government. So hopefully we'll be able to get that as well as potentially some other programs in the future.
But it's a potential significant amount of money. It's $540,000 potentially.
It could be significant, yes.
Yeah, and so I think those dollars coming back into our community, and I think working with your county and another partnership and making sure we're not double dipping or businesses are double dipping, but trying to create some sort of relationship with them to identify a plan to maybe do some additional business supports locally, I think makes a lot of sense, especially if there were businesses, small businesses like this lady out here that maybe weren't available in the first round of funds or couldn't get any EVP funds for that sort of stuff. So correct. I appreciate the governor's willingness and the legislature's willingness to continue to include local governments in that conversation around CARES funding. It wasn't all we wanted. It wasn't all we thought we were promised. But it is a significant amount of money to hopefully offset some of the costs that our communities have incurred in the loss of revenue and productivity in the last 2 or 3 months. So hopefully we can put those funds back into our community and put them to good work. So I'm thankful to the legislature and the governor for that.
Right. And I'd like to finish up with just a couple of You know, we don't often get thank you letters for city departments or city efforts, but we have a couple, and I just want to share those with you. First, we received a letter to Hermiston Energy Services. It said, just a note to say how much we appreciated your quick service to restore our electricity due to recent events. We do not take you for granted and are grateful for such professional and dependable service.
Nice.
So that's nice.
Yeah, those guys worked their tails off for like 3 days in a row. I mean, I'm not sure. One guy told me 3 days he got 8 hours of sleep. So it's amazing.
And then the other, when we were doing our initial curbside checkout at the library, one of our library workers went over and above by putting little notes of encouragement in books for a certain patron, an elderly woman, and kind of encouraging her. And so she wrote a thank you note saying how that really helped her get through this difficult time when she had to spend a lot of time alone and so forth, and she saved those. And so I thought that was a very nice tribute to another of our employees looking out for, kind of going above and beyond. So
Good for her.
thank you.
Make sure she gets a combination or thank you from the council. Unfortunately, there was a lot of people, especially our senior population, that were pretty isolated. They had shelter in place and keep distance from a lot of people, and still many of them do, and are afraid to go out in public. So, think about your neighbors and your folks around you, and if there's a person in your neighborhood that maybe needs to check in or knock on their door, you might just stop by and talk to them and see how they're doing, and see if you can run to the store for them, or go to the library and get them a book or words of encouragement. Well, anything else, Mr. Smith?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, council. We are adjourned.